Welcome to the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast, fueled by Raphael's Roastery and supported by you. Connect to us on socials or dawnandsteveplus.com.
Dr. George Barna always has great information. And Dr. Barna, every time we talk, I think, okay, the next report's going to be a little bit better. But this one comes out revealing shocking...
Have you not learned by now?
No, I am an eternal optimist. Have you not figured that out yet?
Yes, but at some point, you got to quit banging your head against the wall. Only one person's going to get hurt.
Fresh wind, fresh fire, anyone? I mean, I'm just hoping for the turnaround before the rapture. I'm just saying. But Dr. Barna, you do have some statistics now in the latest 2025 American Worldview Inventory. This is report number 5 we're going to be talking about. And it's talking about this shocking transformation when it comes to the faith of Americans. My friend, is there one statistic in this whole report that shocked you more than others?
Well, first of all, that intro kind of shocked me. I mean, you introduced me as Dr. Barna, not Dr. Feelgood, okay?
That is true. Yeah. That's true. It should go with the territory. Is that what you're saying, friend?
Yeah. I don't know. It was there one more than anything. I think maybe the fact that in terms of people looking at truth, absolute moral truth, where they get truth, all of those issues that I assume we're going to talk about, the fact that less than 1 out of 5 Americans consistently rely upon the Bible as their primary source for discerning what truth is. Mm-hmm. Now, I know things have gotten low, things have gotten bad, we don't buy into truth. Yeah, I get all that. But 18% consistently relying on the Bible, that's really disappointing to me. And again, it says to me, we've got to rethink our strategies and tactics that we're using in ministry, because whatever it is that we're doing on so many levels and in so many ways is not working, that we really need to, a reset.
And before we get into some of those things specifically, one of the things that jumped out at me right away, and it's early on in the report, is, as you say, a lot of the things that we're doing, we need to rethink and do a reset because it's not working. Like Christianity in decline, but other faiths and other belief systems seem to be growing right now. Would you talk just for a second here about what you're seeing across the U.S. religious culture landscape in terms of where do we see people actually, in a sense, growing in a belief system?
I don't know if I can tell you if they're growing within that belief system, but I can tell you which belief systems are growing numerically. And I hope that distinction makes sense. But yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is that Christianity is down. Years and years ago, 90% of Americans at least claimed to be Christians. Now we're down to 66%. So that's a significant drop. If we just look at it in the last 5 years, Christianity has dropped by about 7%. So where are people going? I mean, they're going all kinds of different places. And I think that's the nature of our culture right now. It's very fragmented. People are searching for something that they feel comfortable with and that's going to add value to their lives, because now everything is about me. Serve me, take care of me, make me comfortable, make me secure, make me happy. And so they're looking for a faith system that will do that. And for a lot of people, Christianity isn't necessarily seen as a faith system that's going to make them happy. It might make them good. It might make them eternally secure, but they want to feel happy and upbeat right now. And so where are they turning? Well, you've got a lot of people who are turning to non-Christian faiths. The biggest jumps that we've seen actually are in the small non-Christian faiths. Those are up by 77%. You've got, in the last 5 years, what you've got, though, is significant growth in some of the other global major faiths, those like Buddhism. That in America has grown by 56% in the last 5 years. Islam has grown by 12% in the last 5 years. Judaism has grown by 21% in the last 5 years. And that's, the context again is that Christianity is down 7%. So there is growth taking place, but it's going elsewhere. But then the other major area to think about, and it's probably the most significant because it's the larger one, is people saying, I don't want any faith at all. And so there's two ways of slicing and dicing that kind of population. You've got those who simply say, yeah, I have no faith affiliations. I'm not looking to faith. That's 23% of the population, up 10% in the last 5 years. But the other one that I know I've talked with you all about before are the group that I call the don'ts. And these are the group of people that says they don't know if God exists. They don't believe that God exists. They don't care if God exists. And so the don'ts have grown by 13% in the last 5 years. They're up to 36%. More than a third of our population now fits that don'ts category. So, yeah, I mean, this is a major reshaping of the faith landscape of America. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty shocked that churches aren't jumping on this and saying, okay, we got to take this seriously, because where this reshaping is taking place most substantially is with our younger adults. The old folks are kind of staying put where they've been, but it's the younger folks in particular who are trying to figure out, what is my life going to look like? What are my inputs going to be on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Who am I going to trust? What institutions am I going to turn to? How is faith going to be part of it? They're the ones right now that are putting that lifestyle together for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And so if we miss that boat as it's leaving the dock now, we're not going to be able to jump in and swim after it and catch up. So this is a really important time for the Christian body in America to wake up and say, you know what? We're not connecting. We're not getting the message through. And we've got to rethink how we're trying to do that.
Rethinking, because like the report started, it's shocking. It's just this data reveals shocking trends that are changing here in our nation. And as you're talking about where our young people are getting their information, they're turning to YouTube, I think, and TikTok, and trying to get influence in that way. And that is shaping what we think about truth. All of these things seem to be responding to what we individually and collectively think about absolute truth. So can we look at that a little bit, especially the moral truth aspect of it? You said we want to be happy. Well, then we probably have to have our own set of morals.
And that's exactly what we're doing, Dawn. I mean, we're at a point where 66%, 2 out of every 3 adults in America, and a higher percentage of kids, say that there is no such thing as absolute moral truth. That the individual is the only one who can determine, quote unquote, their truth, that it depends on the circumstances, depends largely on their feelings. This is really a lot about feelings. And we've got other reports, another one that's come out that talks about where they're getting their truth from. But in this case, we know that, to a large extent, people are saying, well, I've got to feel it for it to be right. If I don't feel that it's right, if I don't feel that it's appropriate, if I don't feel that it's true, it can't be, because I'm the only one that knows what truth is for my life. So once again, what's interesting to me about that is that you see that having infiltrated the Christian body. This isn't just something that people who are Buddhists or postmodernists or secular humanists are latching onto. I mean, what we found is that, yeah, they're certainly into that. But for instance, 61% of all people who attend a mainline Protestant church say there's no such thing as absolute moral truth. 69% of Catholics, the largest of the Christian-oriented denominations in the country, say there's no absolute moral truth. And so, we go on and on down the whole list. But I mean, the point is, this isn't just them, it's us as well.
Yeah. And as you said a few minutes ago, you're surprised that the church is not jumping on this and getting all over this. Why do you think the church is not? I mean, what are we missing in the church?
Well, leadership for one, but I think part of the problem here is that when we interview pastors and we talk with them about this, their attitude, if you will, and I don't mean to put them down at all, but I mean, their perspective is, well, it's not my fault. I'm teaching truth. And I think one possible response to that is, well, you may think that you're transferring truthful information, but somehow it's not connecting with the audience. So we've got to rethink what's the approach that you're taking to try to get people to understand there is truth. God is the embodiment of truth. He codified it for us in his word, the Bible, so that we could grasp it. We could take it and live it. And if none of those things are connecting with the people in your church, and our data show clearly they're not, then you've got to rethink the approach that you're taking. Maybe you're relying on sermons. Maybe sermons aren't the way to get that across. Maybe you're relying on small groups to pound that home during the middle of the week. I mean, our research shows that small groups do virtually nothing to disciple people. Great for growing community, and that's very important. We need that. But let's know what each of the vehicles we're using is capable of bringing us to. And so we may need some new vehicles to bring us to a different place theologically.
Different vehicles. You just wonder, with churches being so tried and true with what we know, if you've been raised in the church, you can almost, give the whole, you don't even have a bulletin anymore, but you can say what's going to be in the bulletin. To be challenged with that kind of thinking, Dr. Barna, it's going to be very interesting to see what our churches do before we lose ground completely.
Well, and Dawn, I think part of the challenge too comes back to their training. They do what they were trained to do. And what were they trained to do? Read the Bible, interpret the Bible, tell people what you found. And the way they do that is through sermons, primarily, not exclusively, but primarily. Mm-hmm. Most pastors are not discipling a single individual. So most of our research shows that, at least. And so most of their ministry is geared around what they're doing in the pulpit. And so maybe there's a way to make that effective. But I would say, boy, if I were back right now teaching at a seminary or teaching at a Bible college, I'd be looking really carefully at what I'm preparing young men and women to go and do in ministry, knowing that what we've prepared them to do for the last 50, 100, 150 years, that model is broken. And so we've got to rethink, okay, how do people communicate today? How do you get people persuaded to believe something that they're not naturally inclined to believe? And it's going to take a different approach, but that's critically important for parents as well. So, I might criticize the seminaries for ill preparing our pastors, but I also want to challenge parents and grandparents to be rethinking whatever it is that they're going to be doing with their children or grandchildren, because we're seeing that those young individuals, again, our research is showing, well, they're not buying into absolute moral truth either. They're not buying into the Bible. They're not buying into much of what we're trying to communicate to them. And so there's got to be a different way of doing this. And I'll tell you, looking at all the work that we've been doing, I'm engaged in a big project right now related to discipleship. One of the things that I'm discovering is that one of the two most important things in discipleship is behavioral modeling. And so I can talk till I'm blue in the face, and I can quote every scripture verse I can think of on whatever topic it is I want to concentrate on. But if I then don't show people what that looks like in practice, the chances, at least according to my research so far, are really strong, very high, that what I try to communicate verbally or in writing isn't going to work, because they haven't seen it put into practice. Or what we're finding from children is even worse. They're saying, because we talk with them about their worldview and how it's shaped, and we don't use that language with them. Of course, they have no idea what that means. But trying to understand how they make the decisions that they make, the choices that they make. And what we find is that they listen very carefully to their parents. And they say, I know my parents love me, but I can't trust them to tell me how to live. And it's like, whoa, why is that? And they say, well, it's because I listen to them and I'm trying to understand it. And so then I watch them but I see them do something completely different than what I think they just told me. So I think they're just as confused about life as I am. And therefore, I can't turn to them. I can't trust them. I can't have confidence in them. They're not going to be my primary teachers in these areas. I've got to find somebody who's really consistent, or some place or something that's consistent between what's being said and what's being done. And that, Steve, is why they're turning to the media, because the media are developed to give you a internally consistent message. So you watch a 2-hour movie, you're bombarded with a worldview, but it's the same worldview for 2 hours. You watch a 24-minute episode of a television program, and you're bombarded with 24 minutes of the same worldview. And it's modeled for you through the behavior of the characters. So you hear it, you see it, you imitate it. And that's why the media has such dramatic impact on worldview development in America.
You know, as you were talking about this and what the church has lost and lack of leadership and these things, one of the first things that came to mind for me is conversations we've had in the past of how many of our pastors actually don't even have a truly biblical worldview, and how in many of our denominations, many of our pastors, some of our seminaries, they're not being trained with a biblical worldview. And so then as these pastors are in the pulpit doing what they're doing, you see where the inconsistency is coming from. Moms and dads don't have a biblical worldview because the parents or the pastors that they're listening to don't have a biblical worldview. I mean, if you were to, in a sense, George, trace this all the way back to where you think we massively got off the rails, is there a spot where you can identify, or has this just been a super slow fade over a really long period of time?
You know, my perspective on a lot of this is that you have to put all of this in context. And the context is that you and I and everybody else live in the midst of spiritual war. And we're fighting a very clever enemy, a very well-resourced enemy, a very patient enemy, a very long-suffering enemy, who's willing to fight and fight and fight and fight and gain an inch today, gain 2 inches tomorrow, gain another inch the next day. Not trying to get the whole mile today. It's like an inch at a time. Yeah, we're going to bowl them over. And I think that's a lot of what we've experienced in the church here in America, where there have been a lot of, if you will, campaigns, battlefront campaigns that have taken place from our enemy to convince us of different things that are just plain wrong, just plain sinful. But we bought into it, and he keeps building and building and building on that. And we're not standing back and assessing what's going on. One of the things that I'm finding in all the work that we're doing with churches right now is that we do not measure how we're doing in ministry. You know, I've talked with you all before about the 5 things that churches across the country consistently measure: how many people show up, how much money we raise, how many programs we offer, how many staff people they've hired, how much square footage they built out. And Jesus didn't die for any one of those things. So why are we bothering to measure it? But what did he die for? So that we would become his disciples. We would be transformed by his love and his death and resurrection for us. And we would imitate him because we love him so much and we believe in him so deeply. But we don't measure those things. And I can't tell you the number of pastors who, when I bring this up, say, well, but that's really hard to measure. Duh. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be measuring it. And it doesn't mean that we can't measure it. Jesus gave us 6 things that make somebody a disciple. We can take those 6 things, codify them, and measure them. I've been doing that in this research on discipleship. So I can now tell you, you know, at least based on that measure. I mean, only God really knows. But, you know, just looking at that, it gives us an estimate of how many people are genuine disciples of Jesus in America. Could any individual church be doing it? Yes, even better than I can do it. But we've got to have the will to know the tough information, because we want that information in order to do our best to serve God as effectively as possible and to do everything with excellence, because we know that we're doing it for him.
Amen.
Yeah, man, there is so much more to this conversation that I wish we had the time to dive a little bit deeper. But there's a lot of stuff we did not get to in this report we're talking about today. We're going to put the link in the show notes. Encourage you to check that out. George is with Arizona Christian University, the Cultural Research Center there. And Dr. Barna, thank you for joining us today.
And Steve, thank you both so much. It's always great to be with you.
Thanks for joining us for the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast. We're a listener-supported, non-profit podcast, and we're grateful for your generous support. You can give at dawnandsteveplus.com. Our producer is yours truly, Stephen Briggs, with assistance from Chris Westmoreland. Please like and subscribe to Dawn and Steve Plus anywhere you get your podcasts and on all our socials. Links to what we talk about and to Raphael's Roastery are in the show notes below. Thanks for joining us and being our plus one.